he built something real. 9 years. No shortcuts. No inheritance. No fortunate timing that he did not earn through the particular discipline of someone who remembers exactly what having nothing felt like and has decided with every decision never to return there. By year 9, the business was generating more monthly than most people earn in a year. He had done it correctly, carefully, with a track record that earned genuine respect from people who understood what the numbers meant. Within 3 years of that peak, almost everything was gone. Not taken, not stolen, dismantled, systematically, invisibly, by a pattern that visited him at the exact moment of his greatest achievement, and that he never once recognized as a pattern because it felt, from the inside, like ambition. That pattern has a name. Almost nobody uses it. And once you see it, you will find it everywhere in business collapses that make headlines, in quiet personal financial reversals that never do, and in decisions you have made yourself that felt completely right at the time, and that, in retrospect, were driven by something that had nothing to do with opportunity. Think about the last time you achieved something significant. Not the celebration. What came after? The specific feeling that settled in once the achievement was real and the next chapter had not yet formed. If anything about that feeling surprised you with its emptiness or its restlessness, go to the comments right now and write after the win, because what you felt has a precise psychological explanation, and understanding it is worth more than most financial advice you will ever receive. For 9 years, his identity had been organized around one axis: building the business. Every sacrifice, every refusal of comfort, every difficult decision derived its meaning from the pursuit. The pursuit was not just what he was doing. It was who he was. The struggle was the identity. Stable, coherent, deeply motivating, because the goal was always ahead, always pulling, always providing the psychological structure that made difficulty feel purposeful. When the goal was reached, the axis disappeared. Not the business. The architecture the pursuit had been providing, the sense of forward motion, the clarity, the specific and sustaining feeling of being someone in the process of becoming something. That feeling cannot survive achievement. It requires an unfinished destination. The moment the destination is reached, the feeling that made the journey meaningful has nowhere left to live. Psychologists call this arrival fallacy. The gap between what achieving a goal was imagined to feel like and what it actually produces when the achievement is real. The brain's reward system is calibrated for pursuit, not possession. Dopamine is a molecule of anticipation. It fires during the approach to a reward, not the holding of one. The moment of achievement is also, neurologically, the moment the reward signal begins to fade. For ordinary goals, this is manageable. A new goal forms. The forward motion resumes. For the goal that was also the identity, the collapse is a different order of magnitude entirely. He did not recognize what was happening. The experience did not present itself as crisis. It presented as restlessness, as the reasonable desire of a successful person to take the next step, to build on what had been built. Because that is what people at this level do. The restlessness was real. The direction it drove him was the problem. He began moving faster and at a larger scale than 9 years of careful building had ever produced. Not because the opportunities were better, because the decision-making itself had become the replacement for the pursuit. The deals, the risks, the constant forward motion, these were not strategies. They were psychological substitutes for the identity the success had taken when it arrived. This is the pattern nobody tells you about success. Not that it feels bad, that it creates a specific vacuum. And that vacuum, if not understood and addressed deliberately, fills automatically and urgently with whatever behavior most closely replicates the feeling of the original pursuit. For him, that behavior was risk. Escalating, increasingly unexamined risk. Not because he had become reckless by character, because the neurological profile of a high-stakes decision, the focus it demanded, the identity it restored. The feeling of being someone with something significant at stake was the closest available approximation of what building the business had felt like for 9 years. He was not chasing returns, he was chasing a feeling. And feelings are the most expensive things a person can pursue with capital. Pause here. Ask yourself something honest. In your own financial or professional life, have your most aggressive decisions come not during struggle but immediately after achievement? Where success was followed not by consolidation but by escalation that in retrospect was never really about the opportunity. If that pattern exists in your history, go to the comments and write "I see it." Because recognizing the trigger is the only thing that creates a gap between the impulse and the action. 3 mechanisms were operating simultaneously beneath every decision he made during those 3 years. The first was identity vacuum, the psychological destabilization that follows the achievement of a goal that was also functioning as an identity anchor. The brain, deprived of the organizing structure the pursuit had provided, enters a state it experiences not as grief but as restlessness, as the urgent need to be doing something meaningful. The crisis is real. The solutions it generates are often catastrophic. The second was hedonic adaptation, the brain's ruthless capacity to normalize any circumstance, regardless of how extraordinary that circumstance would have seemed from a previous vantage point. The success that once felt like the destination becomes, within months, simply the new baseline, the new floor. And from that floor, the brain begins recalibrating what would constitute genuine success. The goalposts move not because the person is ungrateful, but because the brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, ensuring that no achieved state ever produces sustained contentment. The third was overconfidence, born from legitimate competence. The specific distortion in which genuine skill, demonstrated across a real track record, produces a confidence that gradually detaches from the conditions under which the skill was developed. He had built one business in one industry over 9 years under specific conditions that were partly skill and partly timing and partly accumulated small advantages that compounded in ways that would not automatically replicate elsewhere. His brain did not make those distinctions. It had learned one lesson, reinforced across 9 years of confirming evidence. My judgment produces results. That lesson, extracted from its context and applied universally, became the most dangerous belief he carried. The collapse was not dramatic. Dramatic collapses are almost a mercy. They are visible, attributable, and force examination. His was slow. A series of investments that underperformed. A partnership that eroded. A sequence of decisions that each had a reasonable explanation and that collectively produced, across 3 years, the quiet unwinding of most of what 9 years had built. He did not see it as a pattern while it was happening. He saw it as a run of bad luck, as the ordinary volatility that serious operators accept as the cost of playing at a significant level. The reframe was not dishonest. It was the mind protecting itself from a more difficult truth. The decisions had not been driven by analysis. They had been driven by need. A specific, unnamed, psychologically urgent need that success had created and that he had spent 3 years attempting to satisfy with capital. The most expensive things we buy are almost never the things on the receipt. The people who navigate this transition successfully, who build something significant and then build on it rather than dismantling it through the psychological turbulence of a rival, share one trait. They have developed the capacity to recognize in real time the difference between a decision driven by analysis and a decision driven by the need to feel like themselves again. That distinction is not taught anywhere. It is not part of the conversation about what it takes to build wealth, because it only becomes relevant after the wealth is built and the conversation has moved on. He rebuilt, with that distinction finally available to him. With the specific understanding that restlessness following achievement is not a signal to act. It is a signal to examine, to ask what the action is actually for, to investigate whether the urgency is coming from the opportunity or from the vacuum the success left behind. That question, asked honestly before the capital moves, is worth more than any due diligence ever conducted on any deal. So here is what this investigation leaves you with. The next time you feel urgency toward a significant decision, especially after a period of achievement, ask yourself one thing. Am I responding to the opportunity or to the feeling the opportunity promises to restore? Go to the comments and write what surfaces when you ask that honestly, not the edited answer. The first one, because the distance between those two is exactly where this pattern lives, and the pattern only loses its power the moment it can no longer operate without your awareness.